So then Thousand Oaks came up. Okay, so I drive out to Thousand Oaks, which is an hour, hour and a half out from my house. And there's really not much there. A couple of used car places. Is it T.O. Boulevard? Yeah, that was it. And then I go out to the site of the mall, and it's dirt. And there's like, I think, two trailers that the architects had as their offices. So it's like, what's here that I can give back to Thousand Oaks? And I think I probably said that. And he said, well, you know, there was this place, Jungle Land. And there were no computers then. And I was never a kid that went to the library and did research. I tend to close my eyes and go, oh, please, 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 let me have an epiphany or an idea or a thought. Just call it forth instead of researching it out. So I went out to Jungle Land, and he said, and the people are still alive. It was closed years ago because Jane Mansfield's child got mauled, and they closed it down after that. And I sort of remember that being in the news. So I went out to meet these old people, drove up to this little funky old place where I guess it was, you know, the Jungle Land office or whatever structure. And there were newspapers and stuff piled almost to the ceiling in stacks, and foot-wide pathways through the whole place with all this stuff to look at. And I sat down on the floor, and they brought over a box, and I seem to not remember being there very long when I pulled out that picture of Mabel Stark. And I went, well, there you go. That's it. And they went, well, that's Mabel Stark. She was a famous tiger tamer. She was the first woman that taught tigers to dance. I mean, she was it. And yes, you can have a copy of that 8x10 glossy. And I just couldn't believe the power of that photograph. And so that was step one. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this Mabel and her, here's Mabel and her tiger. What am I going to do? Is it going to be a whole circus thing, or, you know, what's it going to be? I think very early on it just became like Mabel and her tigers. And then it's like, well, how do I draw a tiger? What's a tiger? So Gregory and I went to the LA Zoo, and we took pictures of the tigers, and they had tiger postcards in the gift shop, and I found that none of that really worked for me too well. I got a few pictures of tiger faces and looked at those. And then we went to this exhibit at the Craft and Folk Art Museum. And it was these wooden animals, these wooden toys called Schoenhut. And I had thought they were, from then till now, I had thought they were old German toys. But it turns out they're made in Pennsylvania. And they're articulated, and they had them in sets. Big, long boxes with fabulous labels. And so there would be one of the circus, and there would be a jungle one with hippos and giraffes. And so it turns out that people who are actually artists, and one of them is still alive, the couple, and he's 95, they were the big collectors of these Schoenhut things. And she actually wrote this little book on the Schoenhut animals. And it was their collection that was being shown at the Craft and Folk Art Museum. And there was a big sign that said, "No photographs allowed." And I said to Gregory, oh my gosh, I've got to have some images of these. And he said, we'll show them. I'll draw them. So Gregory drew the ones I wanted him to draw, and a few others. And that became the next step in the tigers. It then became like, oh, you start imagining these things. And it's like, imagine, I loved these toys so much, and just bringing them out and showing them yesterday. Imagine being a kid and playing with these toys, these wooden articulated toys that are beautiful. And there's so many of them, and they're different. There's ladders and chairs and stools and circus wagons and hoops and all kinds of accessories for the circus one. So I'm sort of thinking about all this, like playing with these toys and thinking, so what if the playground, if the idea is really, like I start fantasizing, like there's part of me that if I had another life, made show and hut animals. There's a piece of me that totally knows that, you know, and totally would love to be there. And so how can I take that, this toy experience into these kids coming in? And the dream is that if you're playing with them and then you go to sleep, that you see yourself playing with them, only they're not little anymore. They're your size, you know. You can interact with them like they're your pets almost, you know. And that's why my mascot dogs are so important to me. And that's the theme of all three of these playgrounds, is this interaction and this thing in life that some people have where they love certain animals, you know. And so I really think that that's where this comes from a lot. Like being a military kid and having that thing, that alive animal that is your friend, you know. So then it's like, okay, now I got to go draw the plans. And these animals were made up out of my brain with no prompts visually. It was like I would close my eyes and I would say, okay, what does a dog look like? There's lots of dogs. What does an elephant look like? And just really simplify it to the simplest possible shape that's still read as that animal. And I used to say before the computer, it's as if you were up, you know, up in the atmosphere looking down, and you don't see details from that distance. So it's really like the geometric shape, which again is the computer does geometric shapes, you know. So it was really like pre-computer, I think, image where it's really simple and it's really geometric shape. So where I started was with the tiger face, because I had to get that face down. And so whatever tiger face I had, and it could have been cover of a Smithsonian or National Geographic or something like that, where it was like this tiger face, like. So once again, you know, put the tracing paper over the page, and it's like, okay, start to trace whatever geometric shape is there, you know, and see where the eyes are and see where the ears are, and I have some Polaroids of the process, and it's one of my favorite things ever that I did, because it probably took 12 different steps and incarnation to get the head, the face, to where it's like when the camera's in focus. It's like, okay, you're there. And I love seeing that, and just looking at the process, because it isn't till the last three that it really starts to get to this. And then for Mabel's head, I found out that she had written a book. Somehow I got a copy of the book. Again, there's no internet. I don't know how I got a copy of the book, Hold That Tiger. And I read, probably Jungle Land had given me, but I don't have them, so maybe I just read them out there, different newspaper articles. And one of them was this guy, he was an older guy, and he was interviewing Mabel, and she was older, and his wife was with him. And so he was doing his thing, and then his wife said to him, oh my gosh, she's beginning to look like one of her tigers. So I took that and I was like, okay, if Mabel was beginning to look like one of her tigers, what would that mean? Well, let's experiment with this shape of the tiger face. And when I had the picture, it was one of those old, like my grandmother had hair like this, that you could sort of see was zigzaggy. It was like tight little, curls. So I thought, well, and she was a blonde, so it works. So this tiger is zebra wood, and Mabel's hair is zebra wood. The other tigers, back to the dream idea, when I thought, okay, you're a kid and you're dreaming, and these animals are life-size, it's like the Cats and Jammer kids. It's like they're in pajamas, they're in striped pajamas, and tigers are called striped cats. So I was like, okay, so the 4 tigers, there's actually 4. One is missing, not here, plus the one of Mabel's. So the 4 were striped cats, and the other one was zebra wood, and that's the one that relates to Mabel. And I think then the last pieces of just the design or how this whole thing was going to go together. Well, there's 2 things. The Show and Hut influences were the wagon. It's like it's got big wheels, but this looked like it could fall over. And it's got something up here, and I knew I wanted to have something that said T.O. Circus for Thousand Oaks Circus, because everyone out there calls it T.O. So, I just was like, that's probably the first thing I did was put this arch on here. And then I moved the wheels out. And then I thought, well, I want to have as few bars as possible so that kids can play. And there should be 1 tiger in it. What else? That's about it. That's about it. And then there were some stools that Gregory had drawn. And I was like, well, that's the stool. Not exact, but you get it, right? Pretty close. Yet different. These are round. Not flat like this, they're round. And then the last one, which I actually have, one of the pieces I have, which I started collecting, I just have a few, was this little chair. And that little chair is over there. It's a little different, but pretty much that chair. And then the ball, because there was going to be a cat on the chair and a cat on the ball, and then the ball was just the wheel done again. So then I remember, well, when I got to Mabel and the cat and how they were going to, that was the hardest. Well, there were lots of hard parts, but the designing was, how am I going to have them fit together, and what's the angle going to be? And I didn't quite know, even though I had that picture of Mabel, I didn't quite know, I couldn't quite see how the legs should be, couldn't quite figure it out. And I was driving along Ocean Avenue, and in my rearview mirror I saw a rollerblader, probably a roller skater, in the street following me, and it was early in the morning, so it was just me and them. And I saw how when you push off, one leg, like one leg straight because it's got to support you, and then the other leg goes out. And I was like, okay, that's all I got to do, one straight leg, and then put the other one out at the angle. And then, what are they going to be on? And then I thought, well, it's a circus, so if they were waltzing, it could be a spotlight, coming down. And she taught tigers to dance, so maybe it's in fact a dance floor. So it's either a dance floor or a spotlight. And then I signed it with these letters, these block letters that are actually taken off of baby teeth. But I've made them more geometric and more block-like. And it says Mabel and her striped cats. And it says dedicated to Glory, who was my first mascot, the one that went to Modesto. And I think it says 1979. And then it says my name, Pamela Weir-Quiton. And then I started cutting wood and worked for 3 years.
Do they say you have this much space, do whatever you want?
Yeah.
They didn't have give you any ideas or any
No.
fetters or boundaries or anything?
No.
Nice.
No, and on the architectural plans, it's written down, it's called the depressed children's area. And I'm like, you're kidding? And they were like, well, you step down into it. It's depressed.
When the malls approached you to do work, were you super stoked excited or were you nervous?
Oh, super stoked excited. Yeah, very.
And you just got right into it?
Yeah. I mean, it was a dream come true time to be able to do that. I had a vision. Me and God. Not that I'm like a follower, but me and God walking on the clouds. And me seeing that on every single cloud was a playground. And me getting that if I lived to be 1,200 years old, that I might do a lot of what I would like to do. So I would be happy, or back then, would have been happy if I could have made 50 more of these things, you know? Because they're that much fun to go to the source, find out what's there, do the research, draw the plans, order the wood, build the thing, and install them.
And were you on schedule? Did you take too long?
Yeah.
According to the architects and everything? Were they yelling at you?
They were coming to see me. And at some point they just like gave in and started breathing with me. Like, well, it's going to be so cool. Whenever it comes, it'll be great. And then they did this big unveiling, and we did this thing in the newspaper, you know, and there was several articles written, which I pulled out to show you. And it was, Ernie Hahn himself came. He's got a picture in there with me in one of the newspapers. And that was the last one I did for them. Now, I don't know what happened to them. I don't know. As far as I know, this was it. I don't think they went someplace else and got somebody else to do stuff like this. And I was worn out at the end of this one. I wanted something easy, and that's when these stick figures started popping up. Something that I thought would be fast, which nothing is fast in wood. So one day, Gregory says they called him. One day he's drawing, and the phone rings, and somebody says, "Hi, it's the Thousand Oaks Mall. It's the Oaks calling. We have some little animals here that we think you did, and we want to know if you'd like them back." And the story was that was interested in the depressed children's area for a plastic hamburger and plastic French fries. And we said, yes, we would love to have them back. Thank you very much. And went out and picked them up, got my handyman guys who we rented a big truck, and we went out and picked them up. And it was an open truck, and as we're driving away, there's these guys with kids in the back following us in a car yelling, "Don't take our memories, don't take our memories." And we're yelling, "It's not us that wants to do this." You know.